Hi all, my name is Dhruv Sharma and I welcome you all on a new session on how to set up cloning on F5 load balancers. Well, we know that F5 load balancers perform their job pretty well on load balancing the traffic, but there could be a requirement when a traffic which is being processed by F5 load balancers is supposed to be sent to a third destination like IDS or IPS. In those special cases, this traffic cloning would be very beneficial. Let's discuss, and we're going to discuss and do a small lab exercise as well. On that note, let's jump in. Well, as I mentioned, we're going to discuss about what cloning is and why we need it, and simple steps how to configure F5 cloning, and some lab exercise. Well, F5 Big IP supports cloning. The cloning can happen either directly on the pool members, or we can configure interface-based cloning as well. That is, that entire interface traffic is directly being sent to a monitoring device like IDS or an IPS, and or we can do it on the pool basis as well. Well, F5 suggests like the preferred method is perform cloning on the pool itself rather than sending the entire data of a load balancer over an interface. It's better to send only the interesting traffic. Let's suppose we have some couple of pool members or certain web virtual servers which needs to be monitored, which those virtual servers which are critical to your organization. And IDS and IPS needs to monitor those systems. That kind of traffic is supposed to send to those sniffing devices or the IDs or IPs in what we say. So yeah, but again, the option to configure interface based monitoring is also available, and the details are also given in this reference link section, which I've shown it on this in my slide. You guys can get the copy of this slide from the description section below. Well, as we say that, when the copy or the clone of the traffic is being sent to the IDS or IPS or the clone server, the load balancer doesn't perform any SSL handshake. So, what I mean that this is the load balancer, this is the source server, and it is trying to reach a destination server protected behind a load balancer. When the traffic has been sent to the source to the destination, and the clone traffic is being sent to the clone server, this clone traffic, there is no TCP three-way handshake happening between the clone server and the load balancer. So this forwarding of the traffic happens on the layer 2 basis. So you can't expect a TCP three-way handshake happening between the load balancer and the clone server. That's a very important point which we need to understand when we're trying to perform such kind of cloning. Well, in my lab topology, it's pretty simple. I have a router which has an IP of 10.10.10.43. It contacts the F5 load balancer, which has a self IP of 10.10.10.10 and has a VIP of 10.10.10.9. The primary pool behind the load balancer, it has an IP of 192.168.61.1. That's my primary pool member, and that I've called it as a syslog01. A self IP of this F5 has 61.100, and the mirror or the clone pool member is 61.102. So technically, what will happen, the router will going to send some syslogs down to the VIP. The VIP will forward the syslog messages to the primary syslog server. However, the clone syslog server will also receive the packets as part of this exercise. As I mentioned in this exercise, it will just forward the packets in a layer 2 mode. So it doesn't perform any TCP three-way handshake or any sort. It just dump that packet to the destination address. Well, configuration, as I mentioned, the configuration is very simple for the F5, and I don't see any challenges with the configuration. When I was testing this in my lab, the most challenge which I received was I was building the lab, to build the syslog server, and that kind of setting up this lab was a bit of a challenge. But configuration was super easy. So first we configure a first we supposed to have a F5 VIP and a primary uh, pool member, and we can confirm that F5 VIP to pool traffic is working perfectly fine. Job done. And the clone pool. First step, we need to create a clone pool. So the clone pool needs to be created. You may or may not have your monitoring enabled. Yes, you can have monitoring enabled optionally. There is no problem with it. And second step, go back to the primary F5 virtual server, the VIP, which is already mapped to its primary pool. The secondary or the clone pool is basically added under the advanced configuration and clone members. So you need to call that pool into the clone section as shown over here. Finally, the lap time. As I mentioned, today's video was pretty nice, quick, and easy. So let's go ahead and check how this stuff works in the lab environment. So let me briefly walk you all through the lab. So this is my virtual server that is an IP of 10.10.10.9. I think if you were closely monitoring my topology, so this matches with my topology as well. The VIP is 10.10.10.9, and it is indeed 10.10.10.9. And it has a pool member resources, syslog01, which is a primary pool member. Before we get into the more details, let me walk you through my lab as well. The self IP is 10.10.10.10 is a self IP facing the virtual server, and the self IP is 192.168.61.100 towards the servers. That perfectly matches with our topology. So if I go back to my lab, my that's my virtual server up and running. It is mapped to a primary load balancer, syslog01. Let's go back and see the syslog01. Before we do that, the configuration of it's pretty very standard. I didn't did anything special. Uh, this virtual server is supposed to receive syslogs from the Cisco router. So sorry, pardon me. Cisco router will be sending a UDP-based syslog messages towards this VIP. The router is already configured with this IP address, and it is supposed to send this traffic to its syslog01. And currently, I only have one single syslog router. So I will remove this to avoid any confusion. Yeah. So it only has one single member, which is 192.168.61.1. So I think that completely matches with our lab topology. So I think it's pretty nice and easy. We also built as part of step number 2, I also built a mirrored syslog01. I can enable ICMP ping as well. That's not a problem. And that has an IP of 192.168.61.102. That again matches with my topology. So I'm just trying to bring you up with my topology and how it has been configured in my lab. Perfect. So the last step to configure it is basically go back into the virtual server, advanced section, and add that pool member into client and server. And then we're going to test this traffic. It just we need to select that pool, mirror one over here, and click update. That's it. Nothing much needs to be done, and it's pretty very, very simple. Now it's time for testing, guys. So we will go back on Cisco router. First, we're going to enable packet capture on the on this machine. So basically, this is a let me take you to TCP/IP setting, please. One moment. Yep. So that's the uh, interface, and it has an IP of 61.102, which is the clone server. I don't have any IDS or IPS in my lab, so I will consider this as an IPS or an IDS in my network, and I will enable packet sniffing when we're going to test it. So technically, what we did, we just created a clone pool and added that clone pool under the advanced section of the primary virtual server. And as we say it, we're going to click the enable the packet capture. We minimize it, and we'll go back to Cisco router. And I will unshut and shut the interfaces, which will enable this router to send some syslog alarms. Okay. Uh, this is the primary primary pool member, and we can see that it has indeed received these logs. So the primary pool member, if I go back to my F5 load balancer, the syslogs were received and it was sent to the primary pool member, which is this one, statistics, and we can see the traffic was being sent. And yes, it was indeed being received by our syslog server. Perfect. But when I go back to my clone server, let me pause the packet capture. The yes, it also received the syslog messages on the cloned server as well. One thing which I would like you all guys to focus on, the cloned server, it has an IP address of 61.102, but it was receiving a traffic of 61.1. Getting the point? It is, if you remember what I mentioned on in the initial start of the setting, the traffic is being sent on a layer 2 mechanism, not on a layer 3 mechanism. Just because the server received the traffic based on a layer 2 basis, that's why it was able to receive it. If this would have been any different, we would not able to receive that message. And that was it. If I even enable this um, uh, packet capture continuously, it will it will continue to sniff all the traffic which has been sent to the primary pool member. So 61.100 is the IP address of F5 LTM, the internal self IP, and 61.1 is an IP address of the primary syslog server. Whatever traffic F5 is sending to the primary syslog server is just been captured over here. And we proved that this mechanism perfectly works. The session was quick, but I hope it was informative. Any questions, guys, just drop a message. I promise I will respond back to you. And I hope this session was useful. On that note, hope to see you all. Hope to see you all in the next video. Thank you.